In the Gaming War series, we look at the history of gaming, how it's changing today, and where it's going in the future. This series will eventually end with the current console leaders Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony, as well as the state of mobile, computer, and platform gaming. In this third episode, we're going to find out how Sega did what Nintendo didn't. At the end of episode 2, we found out how Nintendo single-handedly revived the video game console market in North America. But how did the video game industry mature after this massive growth? This episode covers the fourth generation of consoles, also known as the 16-bit era, which was the most fierce battle in gaming wars. Even US lawmakers had to step into the fray. In 1988, Nintendo had 83% of the console market with great games, smart marketing, but most importantly, it had tight control of third-party game developers through exclusivity contracts.
Exclusivity contracts? What are those?
These were contracts issued by Nintendo to US-based game developers that forced them to make games only on the Nintendo platform. But now that the market was growing again, competition was bubbling up. Sega! Another Japanese company had its first console, the SG-1000, followed by the Sega Master System. It was technically superior to the NES, but it had a weak gaming platform. NEC, a Japanese computer company, released the TurboGrafx-16, also known as the PC Engine, in 1988. It had the first CD-ROM optical drive and played newly released music CDs. But when it finally came to the US 2 years later, it was really expensive, and again it had a weak gaming platform. Nintendo's exclusivity contracts were keeping out competitors. But technically, it was ahead of its time. But Sega figured out a way to chip away at the Nintendo empire in North America. It started in '88 when Sega released the Mega Drive in Japan. Before the US launch, Sega approached Atari, but Atari turned them down. So they decided to go it alone with a marketing campaign that focused on how the Genesis was better than the Nintendo, and using celebrity-endorsed games to promote their products.
16-bit arcade graphics.
You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis does.
16-bit sports action.
You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis does.
Get Joe Montana free, Pat Riley free, Buster Douglas free, Super Monaco GP free, or Collins free. What Nintendo?
But with games like this, Nintendo still had everyone's imagination.
Mario! Mario!
Super Mario. 1, 2, and 3. There's power in numbers. Nintendo. Now you're playing with power. Each game sold separately.
So a new CEO took over Sega and began to focus on game development, so that by 1991, a new Sega challenger stepped up to Mario and the battle was on. I remember when I first saw the Sega Genesis at my neighbor's house. I wanted one. But at the time, Nintendo was working with Sony behind the scenes on a peripheral to their upcoming 16-bit console that could use CD-ROMs. So Sony announced the product at CES, and then the next day, Nintendo embarrassed Sony by pulling out of the deal. So without a partner, at first Sony executives were against going into the video game industry, but they reluctantly agreed to give the Sony Video Game Group a chance to save face. So they kept working on their console. Then finally, in '91, Nintendo launched the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in North America.
Introducing the next generation from Nintendo, New Super Mario World, created especially for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It's a bit more exciting, a bit more challenging, a bit more graphic, a bit more colorful, a bit more realistic, a bit more levels, a bit more secret, a bit more enemies, a bit more friends, a bit more sound, a bit hotter, a bit cooler, a bit weird, a bit more revolutionary, a bit more Mario, a bit more of what you want. It's 16-bit, and it's yours only if you get New Super Nintendo. Now you're playing with power, superpower.
But by now, Mario wasn't alone. So in mid-92, Nintendo released Street Fighter II exclusively for 1 year. A few months later, Sega fired back with its best-selling game ever. Not to be outdone, Nintendo redefined racing with this revolutionary game. But the peak of the battle started with this commercial. When the dust settled, Sega had 65% of the 16-bit market, claiming victory over Nintendo. And while Mortal Kombat came out on all major consoles, there were big differences that gamers loved, and the US Congress and Nintendo didn't appreciate. The Sega release had a secret uncensored version that could be unlocked with a secret code.
There's an interesting difference between Sega and Nintendo in this matter in that we have moved ahead. They continue to focus their marketing efforts against children. We have recognized that the interactive entertainment market is far larger than just a children's market, and we would like to see a rating system that will allow us to develop games for that broad array of players.
But after all the firestorm, Sega had to create what would eventually become the Entertainment Software Ratings Board. Trying to stay innovative, Sega actually pioneered online gaming with the Sega Channel, a service that offered unlimited access to over 50 games through cable TV connections.
Sega Channel. It's available now, and your cable company has it. It's the first interactive network providing video games on demand 24 hours a day. With Sega Channel, you play what you want, when you want, for as long as you want for one low monthly price.
But unfortunately, it was not enough to dominate against the creative game developers at Nintendo. In late '94, Nintendo released another Game of the Year. This game helped the company stay ahead in the late 90s, while Sega and Nintendo kept fighting a price war. But the video game industry came out different. With two successful platforms, there were no more tight controls over game developers, and there was a growing market for mature games. Now, game developers started getting more power, and were free from Nintendo. And while Nintendo and Sega were fighting to the death in the 16-bit era, an embarrassed team at Sony was about to take advantage of the changing industry by releasing the most game developer-friendly 32-bit console ever made. But we'll have to save that for the next episode. Stay tuned as I hope to continue this series all the way up to the 7th generation of consoles coming out soon, starting with the Nintendo Wii U. And to find the best prices for video game stuff, please support the channel by clicking the Amazon links below and saving any good deals to your cart. Thanks for your feedback in every video, and hit that like button if you approve this episode. If you're a new viewer, please like, comment, share, and subscribe with email notifications to join My Next Appliance, where we try to stay up with innovation everywhere and the companies behind it. You can also follow a Twitter account for news and good tech deals.